Whew, okay, we've got a lot to talk about. In the case of Lee Morphew, he was arrested Friday, June 20th. Oh my goodness. Those of you who have been riding with me, my road dogs, for more than 5 years, you guys know I was all over this case. We were all over it from the beginning, literally from that very first week. So for it to be more than 5 years later, we have so much to talk about. First of all, I want to talk about this new article that dropped today on the Daily Mail, June 26, 2025. I've linked to it below. It's behind their paywall, but it's very interesting. Suzanne Morphew's friend talks about why Barry's daughters will, quote, still support him to the end of time. A lot of people always ask about Barry's daughters, why they are always walking hand in hand with him to court. I kind of jokingly call them the Manson girls. No disrespect. Those girls, I feel sorry for them actually. I literally think they're brainwashed and misled, but we'll talk about that more too. We're also going to talk about Barry's upcoming court trial and a new decision his judge has made, basically banning filming audio and video of the bulk of the trial, the meaty part, the part we want to see. More on that. And then to close up this video, we're going to talk about Shady Shosho. That's what I call her. I'm like, she's shady. I'm sorry. Shoshana Dark, or is it Darky? I think it's just Dark. Barry's now ex-girlfriend. Shoshana also recently gave an interview to the Daily Mail talking about what she's experienced, dating Barry and all that stuff. And at first I was feeling sorry for her because she talks about mistreatment by Barry. But then I went back and I was digging through my old records. Right now I'm uploading more than 4,000 images and videos I have from this case that I had uploaded to my external drive years ago. This has been since 2020, basically Mother's Day, May 10th, 2020. Is when Suzanne Morphew went missing. Lee Morphew, her husband of so many years, was the last one to see her. I had to catch up. I started comparing the stuff that Shoshana told the Daily Mail now, comparing it to videos I made years ago, going through the court documents, comparing what Shosho told police, or Shauna as Barry calls her. Maybe I should call her Shauna. Even though Shoshana's giving a bid for sympathy with the Daily Mail, like, oh, I was mistreated too, and my heart's broken that he's been arrested, all that stuff. When I look back and watch my old video, you guys know my videos from 2022, from about June and prior, they were all deleted. YouTube forced me to revamp my channel and come on screen, cam up. I'm glad they did. It forced me out of the shadows. I was listening to, oh my goodness, some of my videos from 5 years ago, and I'm like, oh, cringe worthy. But I'm glad I have some of the evidence that we went over before. So we'll talk about all that. The way Shoshana was kind of shady with police, and her and Barry were like, they were giving different stories about when they started dating, and it could have been as early as July 2020. Some people think before, May 10th, Suzanne goes missing 2020. Fewer than 2 months later, he's already dating someone else. We'll get there. Mr. Lee Morphew, 57-year-old, he has a new home, and no, it's not some fancy $1.5 million house or mansion or McMansion or Deer Farm or anything he's used to. It's the 4th Avenue Jail. That's the main jail facility at the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. That's where he is now. I got a little excited because I thought he was being moved. I have the Vine link alert set up for him, and I got a text, but it wasn't that. Even though we probably won't get the details of when Barry is transported, he's at the 4th Avenue Jail now in Phoenix, as far as we know. Sometimes we only know after it happened, but he will be extradited to Colorado at some point. Barry has his booking number. Talk about a felony Friday. I mean, praise God. When I got that news Friday that Barry was arrested, I heard from people I haven't maybe messaged with in years, but we were all like, thank you, finally. So he's in this 4th Avenue jail. According to their records, he's on the 2nd floor, house 2C, pod 2, cell number 3, bed number 1. I don't know if he's by himself or what, but it's in Phoenix, Arizona. So I guess Barry had been hanging out, we'll learn, at some Cave Creek kind of trailer park. They have some really pretty, nifty, old type of trailers. We'll look at those photos too. So that's where he is now, in this jail. He's in this jail that has a capacity of more than 2,000 beds. 288 of the beds are specifically designed to house the highest security level inmates in the system. So Barry is charged with murder, so I'm assuming that's him. So he was taken in. It says custody status date. Well, the booking date is June 20th, 5:55 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So of course I've requested all the info. Hopefully they can give me something about Barry. Let me take you back to the beginning of when I heard about this case and my very first red flag against Barry. So Suzanne went missing Sunday, May 10th, Mother's Day. Of course, many of us didn't know about it then. And the search was ramping up over the days. I don't know when exactly I heard about it, but I started hearing about it, and I was sometimes I lay back like, okay, what's really going on here? Well, by Thursday, May 14th, 2020, I knew I had to make my first video about Suzanne Morphew being missing. Once I heard that Barry Morphew told a reporter it was too soon, quote unquote, too soon, to make a plea for Suzanne in public. So that first video I recorded, I was like, oh my goodness, it was Thursday, May 14th, 2020. Suzanne had been missing for 5 days. Plenty of factors in the case just spoke to me. Suzanne was gorgeous. She was a 49-year-old woman, off in Colorado. Allegedly, she went for some bike ride. That was the story being pushed hard. Went for a bike ride. Even on her missing posters, her flyers, last seen in this helmet. And I was like, wait a minute, who wrote that? She was last seen in that helmet? By who? There were red flags all over. At that point in Suzanne's missing persons case, I had not heard Barry Morphew's voice at all. I heard about him, Barry, and I might have seen a photo of him, just from Suzanne's Facebook photos. I had not heard hide nor hair of Barry that whole first week. It was a little bit odd. The only man we would hear from that first week was the voice of Barry's nephew, Trevor Noel. So he was interviewed by the news. That too was a little bit weird. I could hear his voice on these videos on Facebook.
We are on a mission to find Suzanne. We're searching everywhere, nonstop, for any clues that will lead us to her. Please help us get the word out by sharing this post, remembering her face, and being vigilant and aware. And please, if you see or hear anything, call the tip line immediately. 719-312-7530. Even the smallest tip could be the one that gets us closer. All who know Suzanne know her as the most beautiful person inside and out. She's selfless, caring, kind, and loving. Family and friends are tired and hurting, but we're strong and will not give up looking until she's found. Please help us keep Suzanne's photo out there. The more people who see, the better. Thanks for your support from the whole Morphew family. Again, the FBI tip line is 719-312-7530.
He was talking to reporters and he was like, we're missing my Aunt Suzanne. And part of me was like, okay, it makes sense. Maybe Barry's nephew is better with technology, of course. He's probably just jumping in there, helping his uncle. He'll be the voice talking to reporters. He'll be the voice giving information, making the Facebook videos. Maybe he made the flyers. I don't know. When it came time for Barry to jump on camera, which you would naturally expect a worried husband, like, oh, I came home. She went for a bike ride. Where is she? You would expect him to be desperate to find his wife of nearly 30 years, but it made me look at him with suspicion. At that point, that first week, Suzanne's husband Barry had put out a $100,000 reward for her safe return, no questions asked, which was another weird kind of term, kind of like someone watching a movie and it's like, no questions asked. Here, according to Fox 31, quote, he declined to make a public plea when asked by the local news station, saying it was simply, quote, too soon. Now, I was able to find text of that because I remember watching it happen. Barry did not say that on camera because I hadn't seen him yet that first week. I do remember a male Colorado reporter, I think it was nighttime, he was doing a stand-up and he was saying, the husband said it's simply too soon. I feel like that video has been wiped from the internet. Believe me, thank God it's still in the Daily Mail, the words, because I know I'm not going crazy. I know I heard that from the beginning. I know that was my very first red flag against Barry Morphew, because it made no sense. When is it ever too soon to make a public plea for your spouse of decades? If anything, you're happy anyone's paying attention. All these people are searching and you're like, where is she? Oh my goodness, I love her. I'm worried about her. But if you think about it now from Barry's perspective, if he's guilty of her horrific murder, he knew she was already gone. He likely had buried her somewhere on their property. We'll talk about that too more later. And for him, it was too soon. He was like, it's too soon to get in front of cameras and put on my act, because it was the first week. So that's when I was like, whew, all over this case. So Barry kept hiding from the cameras until basically he was forced out of the shadows. Someone probably told him, Barry, this doesn't look right. Get out there and make a plea for your wife. But, you know, he didn't jump in front at the press conference, or he wasn't out there like casually talking to reporters. He made his janky 26-second plea video for his wife of more than a quarter century. This Facebook video was roundly clowned online because he's like, oh, Suzanne, whatever they want. It was just weird. He kind of switched up who he was talking to.
Love you, we miss you, your girls need you.
From talking to Suzanne to talking about the alleged
No questions asked.
abductors or whatever. It was just weird. Somewhere in there, in my spirit, I literally believe I heard the Lord tell me she was abused. I heard those words. She was abused. And of course, I couldn't say it on camera. I think so many people were afraid of Barry. I think that's why that video came down. You know, when the reporter said, Barry simply said it's too soon. I believe that reporter, whatever entity interviewed Barry, but he probably got, you know, the side eye or backlash from it. Barry was probably being like, others were looking at him like, you know, I was looking at him. And so I'm sure that reporter and that news station was probably pressured to take it down. We know how Barry Morphew treated excellent reporter Lauren Scharf, even Barry's lawyer, Iris Eaton. I hated the way she treated Lauren Scharf at that last press conference.
Barry's reaction and the daughter's reaction when they heard this news.
Barry and his daughters are relieved, but they're sad because they too want to know where Suzanne Morphew is. You know, there's been a lot of press and different types of social media, just like you, Lauren, who have really made a case that Barry's guilty, and the community has really done a poor job, and shame on the media, and shame on the people in the press who jumped to conclusions in this case.
That's really unfair to say, but yeah, it is. Yeah.
Participating in the fact that this community was actually believed wrongfully that Mr. Morphew is guilty when there's not even an ounce of evidence against him.
When Iris had the nerve to fix her mouth to call Lauren out. Lauren has been nothing but great about trying to get justice for Suzanne. Well, the attorney Iris had something to say. It was not nice. Barry was riding high on the clouds, you know, him and his daughter walking out into the sunshine. The murder charges had been dropped. For now, they had been dropped. But here we are in 2025. People are eating crow, and I pray they get a conviction. But no matter what, Lauren should not have been disparaged by anyone like that. I'm also kind of like, Barry will get to hide from cameras again a little bit, thanks to his judge's recent order. Okay, so at first I got happy because I was reading this order preemptively granting requests for expanded media coverage. It was filed June 20th, 2025 at 1:50 p.m. Now, I love the system they have set up already. It's very organized over there. They have a specific page here, the people of the state of Colorado versus Barry Morphew. I love it when they know it's going to be a big case. They create their own page for it. And I just refreshed it and I see there's a couple of new things on there. So I want to check those out real quick. There's some kind of entry of appearance. It's Barry's lawyer. We will talk about him, David Beller of Rect Cornfield PC. He hereby enters his appearance in this matter on behalf of Barry Morphew. He's requesting copies of all filings, discovery, and case-related info to be sent to his attention. That was submitted yesterday, June 25th, just appeared on the court website. And we've got another attorney here, Jane Fisher Bereilson of Fisher and Brielison. Her name sounds familiar. The same. Entering her appearance yesterday, she wants discovery as well. She sounds so familiar. Some people were wondering if any of these people are related to Iris Eaton. Potentially. Even though Iris Eaton withdrew as Barry's counsel, I don't know if they have any other ties, Iris and the other woman. But back to the judge's decision about filming. So, at first I got all happy. I'm like, this judge is on it. Judge Hopkins wrote, one member of the media will be allowed to record the proceedings with an agreement to share that video and audio with all other media outlets who request it. So that's good. The pool, video, audio. Any member of the media unwilling to share its video or audio with any other credentialed members of the media will not be permitted to record. Members of the media are solely responsible for making all the pooling arrangements. There will be allowed one media person doing the filming and recording. Hopefully, maybe it'll be Court TV or someone great will get in there. And whenever his trial will start, I mean, this could be next year. I hope it's at least next year. I hope it would make it to trial by 2026. So I was like, oh man, that's great. We'll get to hear it all. We'll get to see it all. And then the YouTuber, The Docket, caught this part in the judge's order. The only portions of the proceedings that may be audio video recorded are any bond hearings, preliminary hearings, arraignment, pre-trial conferences, motions hearings, opening statements, closing statements, reading of the verdict, sentencing, except for any victim impact statements, or post-conviction hearings. No recording of any bench conferences, in-camera proceedings, communications between the defendant and counsel, makes sense, or co-counsel. And it also goes on to say, no video or audio recording shall be made of any minor, makes sense, any victim, juror, makes sense, witness or court staff member, whether inside or outside the courtroom. Video or audio recordings may only be had of the defendant, but I'm like, probably not when testifying, right? Members of his legal team, the prosecution, members of its team, and the judge. So my goodness, that's a lot of no recording, and the portions of the proceedings described there are not the actual bulk of the trial. You know, we've seen the opening statements, blah, 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 those are good. We'll see the closing statements, those are good. Sentencing, fine. But the whole bulk of the trial, it sounds like we can't record. Whether it can be watched is a whole different thing. You know, will they stream it anywhere and we just can't record it? They talk about the media room. They talk about, you know, only 5 media personnel or whatever can make it into the court. It sounds like a really small courtroom. And then there's a media room, and it's like, yeah, the media can watch the live streaming from the media room, but they can't record it. Only the person in the courtroom can record, and then only certain portions of the trial. Not the biggest portion we want to see, everybody getting on stand, everyone testifying. It's so frustrating. I hope we can at least watch it. I mean, will they put it on WebEx or Zoom anywhere? I don't know. Maybe. I know I have a lot of files during different cases where judges have allowed certain things to be streamed, but they cannot be rebroadcast. Even if I record the screen just so I can get my notes correct, I always save those files on my computer as do not publish. I have to remind myself, okay, this you can't publish. You're not allowed to publish this. Will it be that kind of deal? If so, I hate that. Sometimes I do just record just so I can go back and listen and take notes and write my script and tell you guys what happened in court for those type of proceedings. And I'm always saying like, oh, I promise I wish I could show this to you. It's happened in several other cases, but I'm always going with what the judge orders. I'm like, if the judge says no, I'm not publishing it. I never want to risk being in contempt of court or anything. No jail time. I always say I'm not catching a case for nobody. That was the same deal given to the killer of Mariah Wilson, Mo Wilson. Remember Caitlyn Armstrong, she was convicted of the murder of professional cyclist Mo in 2022. The judge that presided over that trial allowed media to film opening statements, closing arguments, the verdict, and that's it. No witness testimony. So it was horrible. I hate when that happens. You know, you can see certain things, and even the opening statements, that was bad. The camera was far away. And I hate it in the judge's order too. For Barry Morphew's trial, it says, oh, you can't use a boom mic. And I'm like, oh my goodness, they don't even let them use a boom mic? Well, In Caitlyn Armstrong's trial, it was very hard to hear the prosecutor during opening statements. I don't know, I hate that. In Caitlyn's trial, we couldn't see her boyfriend, Colin Strickland. He's the guy who was at the center of the controversy, you know, it was kind of like a little love triangle, even though I'm sure he would dispute that. We could only see his horrible antics, you know, pushing over a cameraman, or he was just, I'm sorry, he acted like a jerk. But all we could see was his antics outside the courtroom. We couldn't see him on the witness stand. They said he was disrespectful, speaking lowly. He was like cursing a lot, you know, right there on the witness stand. But anyway, if Barry Morphew has the nerve to take the stand, knowing him, which he will, I don't think we'll see it. And maybe he'll put on that act like when he went on Good Morning America, like his little victory tour or whatever, that voice he puts on. I don't know, maybe I'll try and play a little bit of it. I love my daughters and I love my wife. Oh,
I just love my girls. And I love my wife. And I just want her to be found.
It's like so cringy. It's sad to me because the judge can make the decision to allow video recording or not in Colorado. So Colorado's law permits expanded media coverage, including video recording of the court proceedings, including in murder trials. But it's subject to their discretion. So I hate that. We'll see what we get. I hope we can at least watch it, even if we're not allowed to record all of it. Now, let's talk about this new Daily Mail article published today. It's titled, "My Terrifying Encounter with Barry Morphew While I Was Searching for My Missing Friend Suzanne." So now we get to see why the daughters will just always stick by his side, according to Suzanne's friend. So it says, in the days after Suzanne went missing, of course, Mother's Day 2020, vanished into thin air, her friend Tishas, she led a group of volunteers through the wooded hills near Morphew's family home. She was searching. I love that Tishas because she's been consistent face in the media. She hasn't been like afraid to call out Barry Morphew. So I really appreciate her. So it talks about Suzanne being reported missing by her neighbors. Barry had left that morning, you know, to go on some work trip. According to Barry, he just left her there snoozing in bed. And they had, of course, a wonderful night. They were so close, they even used one plate to just share a steak. They were so in love. Lies. The Morphew daughters were out of town. They couldn't get a hold of Suzanne. The story of the bike ride surfaced. So Suzanne's bike was eventually found, you know, down a little kind of ravine near their home. And when Barry arrived late that night, you know, he's like, "Where is she? Where's the bike? Lying?" And the cop's like, "No, it wasn't lying on its side." He's like, no, mountain lion?" He had all these theories, you know. Did someone take her? Did she get mauled by a mountain lion and the cat drag her somewhere? So they found this bike, but police, knowing what they know, they're like, wait a minute. You know, I'm sure their hackles went up really quickly. Days later, they found her helmet. You know, the helmet last seen in this helmet, they found it. So people knew Barry was looking shady, at least some people. Barry still had some ardent supporters, but I'm glad to see not all people are supporting Barry. Of course, everyone's innocent until proven guilty. I'm not saying that. Everyone needs due process. They deserve for all the evidence against them, for them to be laid out in a court of law, and for a jury, or in the case of a bench trial, a judge, to decide their fate. But some folks were just like, like Barry's uncle Bob. I remember he got on the news like, no, just bury that talk, you know, of anything going wrong in their marriage or Barry being guilty. I hated that. But lately, a guy named Jason Morphew, though, a guy related to Barry, he said, Barry was a heartbreaker, and now he's broken my heart. I think maybe his daughters could take a lesson from that type of relative when we talk at the end about why they are so ardently supporting their dad. So anyway, Tishas, she had become acquainted with Suzanne a year earlier. She knew Suzanne a year. She was trying to ignore all the rumors and everything swirling around. She was focused on finding Suzanne. Where's her friend? So since they found Suzanne's bike near those woods near the home, Tishas organized a search around there. You know, they're like, okay, maybe police missed some clues, you know, let's help them out. After all, the one guy who recovered the bike. He wasn't wearing gloves, as we saw in the body cam video. Different people touched the bike. But anyway, in that search party, there was an older man in his 70s. He had accidentally wandered onto the Morphew property because he was out there looking for evidence, trying to help find Suzanne, trying to help Barry. But according to Tisha, this elderly man in his 70s was confronted by Barry, armed with a shotgun, who shouted at him to get the F off my property and never come back. Tisha says, "We were shocked." That's what she told the Daily Mail. It was such an unsettling interaction, and it was hard to believe someone would act like that towards somebody who was searching for his missing wife. It's like he should have had like beers and food for all the searchers and water or whatever. Like, here's a whole spread, guys. I'm going to help you. Let's refuel, come in the house, whatever. If he couldn't maybe get in the house. I know authorities had the house for like 10 or 11 days or something. Tisha said, "But I guess now we know. I don't think he ever wanted her body to be found." And that's another clue that he had probably buried Suzanne initially, like I believed, somewhere on their property. So with the man encroaching on Barry's property, he's like freaking out. We had heard this news before too, where the video I'll play later, it includes an interview with Andy Mormon, Suzanne's brother, and he talks about Barry was there with a shotgun on his arm. Like, he sees his brother-in-law. Does he greet him with a hug or anything? No, Barry's like got his shotgun on his arm. And Tisha's going to talk about more threatening behavior from Barry. So the weeks and months passed. People didn't know where Suzanne was. Tisha continued organizing search parties, and she had more bad interactions with Barry. Tisha says Barry often drove past them angrily, at speed, heckling and ordering that they stay away from the home, but he never once joined in the search. Now, this is totally odd behavior. He knew he didn't have to search, and we're going to talk about in the latest affidavit too, that 10-pager, how we know what I was theorizing too was correct from a long time ago, that Barry likely moved Suzanne's body. Maybe he didn't bury it in his property, but wherever he put it, and then it ended up in that quote-unquote boneyard. Now that her remains have been examined, they believe she was not out there at the boneyard all this time. But back then they started getting clues about Suzanne's phone and her movements, and stuff wasn't looking right. She was being treated for cancer again at the time of her murder, and they found she had some kind of BAM tranquilizer cocktail in her remains. Suzanne and Barry had kind of been allegedly high school sweethearts, maybe more like college sweethearts, but they knew each other in high school. And leave it up to Barry, they were totally happy, never talk of divorce and all that. You'll hear some of it coming up as I read it from the court documents. But no, Suzanne was done. She literally wrote that to Barry, "I'm done." So now, after all this time, he was arrested in Cave Creek, Arizona, and finally charged with Suzanne's murder. And Suzanne incorrectly, she turned to another man, her high school sweetheart, Jeff Libler. She started having an affair with him, even though Suzanne was married and Jeff was married, but she was just ready to go. Barry always talked about, I never cheated, and Suzanne was paranoid and she thought I was and all that. But no, he had scratches on his hands. He'd been interviewed. I still want to see all these interviews. Believe me, I've requested them, but I know why they didn't give them to me. They were probably like, hold your horses. We are going to arrest this man again, so calm down. He made all these weird trash runs, getting rid of trash. Barry made some suspicious movements after Suzanne's disappearance. They found a live, unspent .22 caliber bullet near Suzanne's bedside, and then this needle cap from a tranquilizer dart in the dryer. Previously, Barry's lawyers tried to intimate or just outright blamed authorities for planting evidence. I hated that. Believe me, defense attorneys, I understand their job, but some of them are just so much worse than others. So investigators recovered empty darts. They found a needle used to inject tranquilizer chemicals into the darts. They found a dart gun, but Morphew's like, I just hunt deer or I hunt chipmunks or whatever they found. He had some crazy excuse for the evidence. Back in 2023, Barry and Suzanne's daughters told ABC they never questioned his innocence. However, prosecutors have let us know in this latest 10-pager arrest affidavit, Barry was the only person in that area of Colorado who even had access to those specific type of BAM drugs found in Suzanne's remains. So even after those murder charges were dropped, thank the Lord they found Suzanne's remains. It was amazing. And then it took time again. We were all waiting for this arrest to happen again. And they've investigated, and now they were charging him with murder. I believe they have a much more solid case. Previously, Barry's defense team was like, oh, Suzanne could have run away. You know, she talked about running away with Jeff to Ecuador. She could be anywhere, you know, blaming it on Suzanne, thinking she would do that, disappear from her girls. They can't say that this time. They found her remains. Police believe that Barry killed Suzanne on May 9th because that's when her last proof of life stuff occurred. You know, she was like jumping on WhatsApp with her boyfriend Jeff and then radio silent. So they think he killed her on May 9th, a Saturday, and then came up with the whole ruse about her going missing on this bike ride on Mother's Day. But the last communication from Suzanne's phone had been to Jeff on May 9th around 2:13 p.m., about a half an hour before Barry returned home from work. So, you know, people are like, did he come home and catch her and then tranquilize her? But stuff started going weird. We've gone over his burglar reports, Barry's truck moving around the driveway, his phone going in and out of airplane mode. But of course, you know, the charges were dropped back then, and Barry just maintained his innocence. And he had the nerve, another thing, I was like, Barry is playing in God's face. He had the nerve to sue local officials for $15 million. Imagine all these people, blood, sweat, and tears, hard work, law enforcement, trying to find Suzanne Morphew. And then her husband goes and sues them for $15 million. He's like, oh, they created this conspiracy. They fabricated evidence. They were trying to ruin my reputation. That case was dismissed last year. I think he was running out of money. We'll see how much he has. Back in 2023, he appeared, of course, with Mallory and Macy there, claiming he's absolutely not the person who killed Suzanne. You know, the girls are echoing. I don't know if they're like, have any fear of him, or there's just so much pressure and brainwashing that they're just like, oh. But the case went quiet. Tisha was concerned, was this investigation mishandled? Will Suzanne never get justice? But then that's when September 2023, miracle of miracles, Suzanne's remains were found in a shallow grave near Moffett. Again, in that area called the Boneyard, even though some locals say that's not called the Boneyard, but thank God, you know, she was found. They don't know exactly how Suzanne died. They have deemed it a homicide. They have found those BAM chemicals in her bones. And now Barry has been arrested. He was taken into custody near his new hometown of Cave Creek, Arizona. So I'm sure he was, you know, kind of hiding, trying to get away from the Salida area where everyone knew his name. We see in the affidavit he had been going by Lee Moore. So he's telling people, that's what the rumor was anyway, women around Phoenix, hi, I'm Lee Moore, you know, for people who don't follow true crime. But even this one woman, I believe she was like, no, aren't you Barry Morphew? No, you're Barry Morphew. The Daily Mail even had that photo from Suzanne's Instagram wearing the gray crested butte hoodie she had on, they say, when she was murdered. I'm wondering, was this what Barry changed her into? There's intimations that Barry not only moved Suzanne, but he changed her clothes. But the smoking gun is the prosecutor saying ultimately the prescription records show that when Suzanne Morphew disappeared, at the time of her disappearance, only one private citizen living in that entire area of the state, not the whole state like some people are saying, that entire area of the state had access to BAM, Barry Morphew. So these are facts, you know, these are facts where it's weird to me when people who are apologists or whatever for guys like Barry Morphew, Brian Kohlberger, whomever, thankfully they're not as bad in the Barry Morphew case, and thankfully in the Stephen Stearns case, Stephen doesn't really have a lot of fans, you know, vocal people. But certain cases where you're like, wait a minute, just can you look at the facts and the odds and the circumstantial evidence? Some people are just like, oh, you just want to convict folks before they've even had a trial. And they're not even just believing this person is innocent until, you know, the case is adjudicated. They're just like, this person is innocent. They could have never done anything like this. And that shows you that they're not keeping an open mind, where people are like, oh, you always want to say guilty, guilty, guilty. It's like some people are way too innocent, innocent, innocent. No matter what, they're innocent. Like in the O.J. Simpson case. Some people, despite all the evidence to the contrary, my own mother was of that thought, didn't want to believe it. Just, oh, it was probably something else, because it's not even about the case anymore. It becomes about internal feelings and other issues. So it does suggest that Suzanne's body was moved. It says forensic experts said the lack of animal activity on her body, along with the minimal decomposition of the cycling clothes she had been found wearing, meant it was unlikely Suzanne decomposed from a fresh body to a skeleton at this location. So indeed, okay, he moved her. She probably wasn't in that boneyard the entire time, all those years before she was found. And by Suzanne wearing cycling clothes, had she put those on herself, or did Barry come up with that? Let me put these on her and pretend she went on a bike ride, she disappeared, someone grabbed her. But the news of Barry being arrested, it's left Tishas stunned and relieved. She said, I wasn't expecting this to happen so soon. So that's what she admitted to the Daily Mail. She actually spoke with them on Tuesday. She said, but reading the indictment, which is just a small part of the evidence they have against him, it seems like the case they've built against Barry is very strong indeed. She said, I think he knew his days were numbered. He must have known they were closing in. The Daily Mail speaks about Barry once again pleading not guilty. Of course, Barry's never guilty. He's never the one with any problems. When you listen at one of these videos I'll play coming up, it's all Suzanne's fault. She was acting crazy. She takes those drugs. She drinks. Barry, he's the perfect Christian. Never cheated, never did anything. Oh my goodness. This man infuriates me. Barry did appear in an Arizona courtroom on Tuesday. He waived his right to extradition. So within 30 days, he'll go back to Colorado. I have a feeling maybe it'll be sooner than that. And he has a $3 million cash bond. Now, can he come up with that? He was spending Suzanne's inheritance money. Like Suzanne put a lot of money into their Salida Maysville home. And she talked about getting an inheritance. And like I speak about in my videos, if Barry would have allowed the divorce to happen, it would have been equitable, whatever was fair. It's kind of like he just didn't want the shame of divorce or the shame of failure. He didn't want Suzanne to just move on and be her own person. Tishas says, in spite of all this evidence against Barry, she doesn't expect Barry to take a plea deal anytime soon, like he won't compromise at all, and she thinks his daughters will keep supporting him through it all. She said, quote, unfortunately, he's too arrogant. I think he's going to fight to the end, regardless of what prosecutors throw at him. And Mallory and Macy will still support him to the end of time. She said he's their dad, and who wants to think their dad is ever capable of hurting their mom? But she also said, Tisha said, deep down in their hearts, this evidence may cause some doubt, but they've already lost one parent. They likely don't want to lose both. So that's her rationale, which makes sense emotionally, maybe not logically, but it makes sense for why the daughters are such ardent supporters of Barry. Maybe in the beginning, I know Barry did a number on these girls. I remember some interview because Barry did start giving some interviews. He would speak with Lauren Sharf. He would speak with different news organizations, maybe mostly on the phone. I remember one where he's like, oh, the girls are terrified. They don't want to stay in this house. Someone took their mother from there. Whatever he said, you could tell he was causing so much fear. And I wouldn't want to stay in that house either, but you could tell he was causing a lot of fear amongst his daughters because he was probably playing it up like your mom really did go on a bike ride. I would never, ever, ever, ever hurt your mom. In a million years, I love her. He was so manipulative. There was one point in the documents it says Suzanne got so mad at Barry. Even he admits this. She wouldn't forgive him because he dragged their daughters, at least one of them, into their argument. Which, who does that? Not a playful argument, but like a real argument they were having. And Barry got the girls, both of them actually, and said, I need somebody on my side. Like, what kind of immature man would drag their daughters into an argument with their mom? He's weird. But I understand from reading this why Tisha believes the girls will always support Barry. In my mind, they've probably been pressured so much from attorneys, from everyone to say, look, you got to be by your dad's side. It won't look right if you're not supporting him. And even in their own minds, I mean, they were very young. Macy wasn't even 18 yet when her mom went missing. But who would ever want to think of their dad doing something so horrible to their mom? Maybe that's part of it. Maybe they feared him. That's another thing we can't discount. Maybe they will break away from Barry. If he's convicted, maybe they will truly sit back, look at all the evidence and make a break. Because maybe that deep down percentage in them that says, yeah, Dad could have done this. Because despite what they're saying on GMA, ABC, all that, oh no, we've never seen an argument. We've never seen a fight. We know that's not true by looking at the court documents, where Macy even suggested to Suzanne to maybe get some type of temporary protection order, or she was counseling her mother about divorce or what have you. So we know it's come up, despite what they get on and act like talking heads and, no, we love our dad. No. Especially Macy, I really think she can crack. I think she was just pressured as the youngest. I really think Mallory is way more like her dad. She's way on his side. But I mean, still, I feel sorry for these girls because they lost their mom. They lost their mother. And a lot of people were angry that they didn't get out there more, be the face of the searches, help. But it's got to be difficult being so young. And if you have this presence like Barry Morphew, if any part of you believe he could have done it, maybe they thought, well, I can't break away from him because he will do the same thing to me next. And if you're a young girl and, especially if you still live at home and you don't have a means of making it, it's like maybe just go along to get along and see where this case plays out. So that could be part of their loyalty. Their loyalty to their dad is manyfold. And, of course, I'm sure they still love him. Of course they love their dad, despite anything he may have done to their mom. Some people go different ways. Some people are able to, I hate you, I'm getting away from you. And I'm not saying they should do that to Barry. I'm saying there is a compromise where people can be clear-headed. They can look at all the evidence. And if Barry is convicted of this murder, then they can recognize, okay, maybe my dad really did do it. That doesn't mean I have to cut him off. Many people still go visit their loved ones in prison. They still write them letters. They put money on their books. They don't have to let their dad go, but they could pray over the years for him to just tell the truth. Whether they decide to forgive him or not, that's between them and God. But it's a whole nother thing to be used, again, like this little robot Manson girls, and we support him, we love him, and no, we've never seen anything, never seen. People are angry about that because it feels like they're disrespecting their mother by doing that. So I think over time, as the girls grow older, we see where this trial goes. If Barry's convicted, please, in Jesus' name, maybe they'll grow out of it and understand more, look at things more rationally. There was another case in Colorado. I always talk about that couple. Dateline covered it, but those kids were like, nope, no way he did it. It makes you wonder, is their mind really telling them, there's no way my father did this to my mother? Or are they really saying, yeah, daddy probably did it? Because after all, the kids know stuff that cops don't even know. They've lived in the house for, decades. They've seen their father exploding on their mom. There's always some kind of signs. There's a buildup. Despite what any of these kids tell the media, they know potentially what likely happened. I hope it's not they're saying, I don't really care what he did. I just want him not to go to jail because I don't know if I could make it on my own without his money. You hope it's not that. Anyway, Tishas was the one who founded the Justice for Suzanne Morphew group after she disappeared. She's had fundraisers, vigils, I've seen all of these things, come across my feed. Suzanne Tree, Tishas might be responsible for that, just to keep her name alive. Tishas does plan to attend Barry's court hearings with other group members, to show support for Suzanne. Tishas said, I think he wanted Suzanne to be forgotten and to move on with his life. I know that makes me want to cry, but that was never going to happen so long as a few of us who've been advocating for her are still around. Barry, it's time to pay for what you did, and we'll be breathing down your neck to ensure she gets the justice she deserves. Woo! Wow. Thank God for friends like that. Indeed. Barry, I've done so many videos about him, but the thing I abhor is him and his fake Christian mask. Guys like him give people a reason to say, see, that's how they act. He's just wrong. Barry is all about, I think, the image from when he was a young boy in high school, kind of looking like Tom Cruise with his, like wife beater shirts, his muscle cars and all that. Used to the women, so he got Suzanne and pretending to be this perfect Christian husband, going off on these hunting trips, listening to the Bible. Oh, he's never cheated. He's never done anything wrong. He might as well put himself up there on the cross with Jesus, the way Barry acts. But they talk about Barry's lawyer, David Beller, criticizing the new indictment. Yet again, the government allows their predetermined conclusion to lead their search for evidence. Barry maintains his innocence. The case is not changed, and the outcome will not either. Yeah, he'll probably eat those words. I don't know if I'm going to like him any better than I liked Iris. So we'll see when the next court date is scheduled, whenever he's extradited to Colorado. I hope it goes at a good clip. I might drop a video in here showing you what I reported previously about Barry potentially moving Suzanne's body and when, on what date, before we close it out with Shady Shosho, Barry's ex-girlfriend. Did Barry Morphew hide Suzanne Morphew at their Puma Path home and then move her? A curious date listed on Barry Morphew's newest charges is making true crime followers ask the question. In the complaint and information released on Tuesday, May 18, 2021, Count 3, Tampering with Physical Evidence, it notes that between and including May 9, 2020 and March 4, 2021, Barry Lee Morphew, believing that an official proceeding was pending or about to be instituted, and acting without legal right or authority, unlawfully and feloniously destroyed, mutilated, concealed, removed, or altered physical evidence with intent to impair its verity or availability in the pending or prospective official proceeding in violation of a section of the law. This is fascinating because the 19057 Puma Path Salida home sold for $1.625 million on March 3rd. So the dates of this tampering charge are inclusive of March 4th, as if Barry may have moved Suzanne on that date. Barry Morphew told Tyson Draper that the triangle around his home had been covered in terms of searching. He was trying to lead searchers away from that area. Barry would know the woods around his home the best and know that the acreage surrounding his Puma Path home was private property.
Tyson Draper. I'm from Arizona.
Okay.
So.
What happened?
Okay.
Yeah, you mind putting that in your pocket?
Oh, not a problem.
Hillside, all the way down to the river, pretty good. My concerns were this way and that way if it was the cat. Because the cats, they drag their prey up the mountain and out of people's. We can't find sign for the cat.
It would make sense in terms of his possessive nature to keep Suzanne close to him. Barry Morphew even warned his brother-in-law, Suzanne's own brother, Andy Mormon, that searchers were about to step on private property during the search. With a long gun slung over his shoulder and hanging trail cams instead of helping his brother-in-law search for Suzanne.
Saturday, not Sunday. I don't think she ever got on her bicycle, if you want the truth of the matter. I expect that she was killed and hidden somewhere in the mountains.
And her husband, not involved in this search? Have you talked to him? What's the relationship there?
I have not talked to him. He was invited into the search by Profiling Evil, and he did not respond. We ran into him yesterday, and he was out hanging trail cams with a shotgun on his shoulder and just kind of told us, hey, you're about to step on private property. So we turned around and went back. We did uncover some things on that mountaintop close to the home yesterday that are being processed by CBI and the Sheriff's Department. And we hope to find more today.
Do you think anyone would want to hurt Suzanne?
No, I really don't. I'm afraid this is domestic abuse, to be honest with you.
You think her husband did it?
I think there's a strong possibility of that.
Did you see any warning signs, or was there anything in the marriage that was suspicious leading up to her disappearance?
Not really. I've found out some things since I've been out here about her working with domestic abuse meetings and things out here that kind of make me suspicious, and that's the main things that I've figured out so far.
Well, and I mean, the police, they're still investigating. What have they told you about kind of where this stands now? What happens next from their perspective, aside from the search you guys are doing?
They're extremely tight-lipped about the investigation. They don't want to muddy up a possible jury pool, for one thing, and secondly, they want to protect the integrity of their information they've gotten so far. So we're working very closely with them and trying to be careful not to let that happen.
And of course, Suzanne has 2 daughters. How are they doing? How are they holding up in all of this?
Those poor girls have been in a blender. I know Mallory's back at college, and Macy's here in Poncho Springs. I can't answer that because I haven't talked to them.
Okay.
What did investigators find in the Puma Path home? Did luminol light up, like they say, like a Christmas tree? Did that let them know that there was so much blood that had been attempted to be cleaned up using bleach or chlorine or something? Did that let investigators know that there had been so much blood evidence in the home attempted to be cleaned up using bleach or chlorine that law enforcement knew Suzanne had met her end inside the home? The gun charges play into the rumors that emerged months ago, where Barry was allegedly telling people that a gun was reportedly missing from the home, as if he was attempting to make people think a gun had been stolen from him. It's count number 4, possession of a dangerous weapon. Again, between and including those pivotal dates, May 9th, 2020 and March 4th, 2021, Barry Morphew unlawfully, feloniously, and knowingly possessed a dangerous weapon, namely a short rifle. Visions of Suzanne attempting to escape a gun blast in her own home, which should have been peaceful and lovely, now dance in my head. Did that cause cops to find plenty of blood evidence in the home? Whatever came of the missing coolers that Andy Mormon spoke about? First responders told Andy Mormon they found it odd that when they went in the Puma Path home of this avid hunter, that there were no coolers in there. What did Barry do with Suzanne? Did he plant her beneath trees on his property or manipulate her remains in such a state that makes it difficult to recover her whole? The coming arrest affidavit will likely be as long as a book, spilling all sorts of diabolical details that we probably never even imagined. Again, why did this happen? Did Suzanne finally put her foot down and stand up to Barry and say she wasn't taking his controlling, possessive, and abusive behavior anymore, allegedly? It can happen after 32 years of being under a guy like Barry's thumb. Suzanne probably got tired of it. With Andy Mormon saying that Suzanne put at least $500,000 or more into the Puma Path home, Suzanne would have been able to walk away from a divorce with her healthy and well-deserved share of the marital property. After all, Barry himself had written that Suzanne had put up with him for 32 years. More importantly, Suzanne would have been able to begin a new life, perhaps with a kinder, more gentle husband. Perish the thought, Barry may have thought to himself. His possessiveness and controlling nature would not have allowed Suzanne to walk away from him after more than 3 decades. He probably felt like he owned her. If he ever thought of her divorcing him and walking away, not only with money and his reputation taking a hit, maybe it was too much for his tiny mind to bear. So he allegedly harmed her. Finally, with Suzanne floating around in heaven with her savior in her new body, Barry Morphew is learning the hard way that he is no longer in control. Fancy criminal defense team be damned, it doesn't mean he's going to walk away. Let's remember, Scott Peterson also spent upwards of reportedly $1 million to hire the best criminal defense lawyer he could find, Mark Garagos, a well-known Hollywood type of guy who would stroll to the court cases with his shades. Scott Peterson still lost his case, despite all that money being spent. and shelled out for the best defense team he could find. It's estimated that Modesto police spent nearly $1 million to investigate the Peterson case. Barry seems selfish to the end. He's not ensuring his daughters are having as much money as they need to go on and live the rest of their lives without their parents, with Suzanne caught up to the third heaven somewhere and Barry sitting in prison somewhere the rest of his natural life, God willing. Instead, he is making sure that a boatload of money goes to his defense. I pray it is money well wasted. That money could have rightfully been passed along to Suzanne and Barry Morphew's daughters. After all, they are very young. One is only 17, one is only in her early 20s. Those girls might live another 70 years. Their parents' inheritance could be theirs. Not saying anyone should benefit from filthy lucre or ill-gotten gain, but I don't think it's right for all this money, part of which belonged to Suzanne, part of which was her inheritance from her hardworking Mormon family passed down to her, to go to Barry's defense team. It just doesn't seem right. And again, God always makes the crooked path straight, no matter what happens, no matter if we're looking at an O.J. Simpson that gets off, heaven forbid, or we're looking at a Scott Peterson that goes down. No matter what, in the end, God knows all, and Barry Morphew will have to meet his maker one day, and he can't pull the wool over God's eyes. Let's close with James 3:17 through 18. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. Peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. Let's look forward to that righteousness soon. Thanks for watching. Okay, now let's talk about this other Daily Mail article. Dark revelations of woman who dated accused Colorado killer Barry Morphew after his wife vanished. We're going to read this and then compare it to the actual court documents. How Shoshana was so shady back then. Shoshana told the Daily Mail in this exclusive interview, she broke down in tears, after Barry got arrested for the murder charge. Quote, "This is my worst fear coming true, that he could be responsible." I don't know. Did she have any clues? So at the end, I'm going to read that video titled Barry Morphew on Friend. And that's another thing. They started lying so much about, we're just friends. And yeah, sometimes I spend time over Shoshana's house and we just talk. And anyway, Shoshana fell for Barry Morphew after Suzanne disappeared. She said, "Obviously, this is my worst fear coming true, that he could be responsible." Shoshana is 55 now, living in Durango, Colorado. She says she's been conflicted about Barry. Barry's 57, I guess. She met him 5 months after Suzanne vanished and stuck by him for 4 years. I think those dates are wrong. In the coming video where I'm actually reading the court evidence, they talk about them hooking up as early as July 2020, even though they tried to make it seem like they didn't hook up until October 2020. Shoshana said, on the one hand, he's such a kind, generous, loving person. But on the other hand, I've had my own experience with him when it hasn't always been that way. So she wasn't giving up the goods. She wasn't telling the Daily Mail exactly what she meant. It says she hesitated to describe the dynamics that caused her to move away and their relationship to fizzle in 2024. So they broke up last year. She moved away. They asked her, "Did Barry abuse you?" She said, quote, "Not physically, but there's other kinds of abuse." She said it was destructive. He seemed to be a very broken man. So part of her, she's going to talk about knowing Suzanne, at least waving at Suzanne. Shoshana cleaned houses in the area. I think she even cleaned the Morphew house. And by her hooking up with Barry, darkness that is Barry, Shoshana herself was even arrested in September 2021 for trespassing and removing a package from his former home just days after he was released on bail for the murder of his wife. What exactly was being sent to that former home? And then Barry, what kind of man are you? He's going to send Shoshana over there to trespass. Now, when anyone was trespassing on Barry's property, he was ready to shoot them with the shotgun. He was cussing at them. But then he goes over there, sends his girl, Shoshana, over there to trespass, get her in trouble, getting a package. They were dating despite them saying they weren't. In October 2021, 3 weeks after Barry was released on a $500,000 bond, he was hanging out with Shoshana. They started being seen together in public, even though they were denying, oh no, we're not seeing each other. People wonder, when exactly did Shoshana and Barry meet and start, messing around? Shoshana owned a company that would clean and manage rental properties. She's saying she never met Suzanne, but she said they used to wave at each other. Suzanne would drive by a vacation home that Shoshana was managing on Puma Path. That's the same street where Barry and Suzanne lived. And eventually, after Suzanne's disappearance, Shoshana would get in trouble being captured on home video security footage. I love the couple, whoever turned her in, grabbing some cardboard box tucked under her arm. And we don't know if police got that. I wonder if they ever did and what it contained. Shoshana claims, I guess, she met Barry through a friend of Suzanne and Barry's 5 months after his wife's disappearance, but those dates don't line up. You'll hear when you listen to the upcoming portion I'll close out with how I reported all Shoshana's shady dealings with the cops years ago. It makes me wonder what she exactly knew and when, because it's real shady, that woman, the way she acted. And I'm so grateful whoever moved in, whoever was there in the house caught her trespassing, to get the package. I'm sure cops arrested her for trespassing just so they could question her some more, get more details, find out what she knew, if anything. But Shoshana says he seemed to miss her. He seemed like he was grieving. Well, he should have been. A wife of nearly 30 years, knowing her since she was in high school, Barry should have grieved Suzanne. He does look sad, walking around that hotel room afterward that allegedly smelled like bleach and all that. But Shoshana has been through 2 divorces and endured what Shoshana called the trauma of working as an Army National Guard medic in Kuwait during Operation Desert Storm. Shoshana said that's the empathy that led her to get, quote, pulled into a relationship with Barry and the drama surrounding him. Shoshana and Barry lived in a rental home not far from that nearly $2 million home he shared with Suzanne. She got that trespassing charge, so the home had just been sold days after Barry was released on bail, for Suzanne's murder, and then whatever package was arriving. The new owners of that home, I love them, giving up all this evidence. They wanted her prosecuted, but the DA's office ended up dropping the charges, saying she probably wouldn't be convicted. But I don't blame them for wanting her prosecuted, because it's like, what was Barry sending? Why did he send Shoshana over there to get it, kind of endangering her? And people were looking at her with a side eye because she even had the nerve to tell police, some people say I look like Suzanne. She wasn't dating a widower whose wife died by natural causes, if she had succumbed to cancer, something like that. Of course, people would not have as harsh words for Shoshana. There were other ways that being Barry Morphew's girlfriend wasn't easy. According to Shosho, she said people who either knew Suzanne or they tracked the news of her killing accused Shoshana of breaking up the Morphews' marriage, even helping do away with Suzanne, or just being, a slut. Now that's bad. I don't go that far. It's just she kind of put herself in a shady position. Shoshana said the bullying was constant, really ugly, horrible stuff. I was living a pretty happy life until then, and then it blew up when she began dating Barry. Shoshana says she told herself evidence against Barry was merely circumstantial and that authorities would drop their investigation after his first murder charge was dismissed. That's what she told herself. And she said Morphew, Barry never wanted to discuss it when she asked him about his wife's disappearance. Quote, he just wanted to heal and move forward. So in hindsight, she realizes she didn't push him on it, but she says, I guess there was some cognitive dissonance on my part. It's something you can't even comprehend, that somebody you thought was a good person could even be capable of doing something like that. Shoshana moved to Durango when the relationship with Barry, it grew strained. She last saw Barry in Arizona in 2024. She said, quote, he was struggling then for sure. So maybe it was really Shoshana's empathy that led her to Barry. Obviously, some women find him attractive, and, they probably bought him hook, line, and sinker, that line about, oh, someone, did this to Suzanne. They did the wrong thing by me. I was wrongly arrested. And after the murder charges got dropped the first time, it probably led some credence to his daughters and Shoshana's mindset of, oh, yeah, they really did, wrongly accuse Barry. He didn't do this. Maybe that's what they want to believe. And even with Shoshana, maybe she was a lonely single woman attracted to Barry. Maybe part of her mind might have thought, merely circumstantial is still evidence. I hate it when people blow off circumstantial evidence. It's still evidence. Combined, the Burla reports, the way Barry was moving his truck. He said he was sleeping, but then the evidence shows, wait a minute, he's moving his truck in the driveway, turning off the lights, slamming the doors and stuff. And, why is this dart cap in the dryer? And what was all these movements? And why did Suzanne basically go dark on Saturday afternoon? I could list 50 of those. All those red flags, she has to be following the case. The daughters have to be following the case. You can't just blow off 50 to 100 things as, oh, that's merely circumstantial. Barry said he would never hurt Suzanne, so that must be the truth. I think with someone like Shoshana, maybe she let her loneliness get to her and say, I just want to be with him. And maybe in the back of her mind, she knew what he did. Or maybe she's attracted to bad boys. I don't know. It's just scary that someone could be with someone like Barry. But Shoshana started coming to life. She started thinking, whoa, this doesn't look good. Once Suzanne's body was found and she learned there was BAM in Suzanne's body, that's when she further distanced herself from Barry. Good. So she really did look at some evidence and say, she must have told herself not everything is some big coincidence. All these people don't have it out for Barry. They just want to arrest him just because. Since breaking up with Barry, she's been working with a therapist to understand dynamics involving control and narcissism that harmed their relationship. She said, I'm just still trying to figure out who he was, if not the person I thought. It's still a process for me to sort things out in my mind and heal. And I get that. Some people, they put up a big front. Other people fall for it. Now, Barry Morphew and Suzanne's daughters, both in their 20s, we don't know if they'll ever come to that realization. I hope they will. Or will they allow the wool to always be pulled over their eyes and it's like, just daddy was railroaded? Shoshana kind of confirms what Tishas says when talking about the daughters. Shoshana said, I think they still completely do think he's innocent. So the daughters might be completely brainwashed. Shoshana has stayed in touch with the daughters, Mallory and Macy, despite Shoshana not being with Barry anymore. She said, my heart is broken. I'm just in the biggest grief for his daughters because they're two beautiful young ladies that I've gotten to know. So I'm sure she did probably become this mother figure. I don't want to say replacement, but by Shoshana saying, some people say I look like Suzanne. That would be, eerie. In the absence of Suzanne being there, perhaps the daughters did look at her as a mother figure, a warm, feminine energy there, someone to make their dad happy. She says, based on her conversations with them after his arrest, she said it's hard for them, but they're doing okay, still very supportive of their father. So I'm assuming this means after his, second arrest, they're okay, they're still supporting Barry. And even Shoshana called him a great dad. Well, great dads don't take mom away from the children. So just because a person might be good looking and at one point was rich, charismatic, and a great athlete, that doesn't make them a great person. Shoshana said they've probably never had a negative experience with him. I don't know, I might doubt that. He has always been there, always listening and wanting the best for them. She said, paused, cried again. She says it's a different relationship than with an intimate partner. True, the girls would only know one side of their dad as a dad. But even then, her saying Barry wanted the best for his daughters, That's not true, because if he did take Suzanne away from them, that's not the best. Wanting the best for your daughters would have been like, look, I'll fall on my own sword. Fine, we can get divorced. I'll own up to the cheating I've done and the way I've mistreated you, Suzanne. Suzanne, you own up to what you've done wrong. We'll divorce. Let the court split it equitably, and let's co-parent these girls, not take one parent away from them. If Suzanne had done this to Barry, I would be saying the same thing. It's just not right. Wanting the best for your children does not entail taking a parent off this earth. So it's twisted. Shoshana's saying it's different with an intimate partner. Of course, that relationship is different. It's like she's saying, I saw stuff, of course, in Barry that you girls didn't see. So she's going to maintain her distance from Barry. After he moves back to Colorado, she's staying away from him, but she will be watching the case. She said, I do want the truth to come out. So a lot of people are talking about Barry living in this trailer park. And I think some people are looking at it as, oh, how the mighty have fallen, from these rich homes, this deer farm in Indiana, and this beautiful home in Salida, and now a trailer park in Arizona. But we should not disparage anyone who lives in a trailer park. It's not about that. And actually, it's a really cute trailer park. I was looking at the photos. He was arrested in Gilbert by the Arizona Department of Public Safety detectives. I've been trying to find the audio. I've requested the videos. It's saying we don't know why Barry was living in the Phoenix area. He did have an address at the Stardust Trailer Park in Cave Creek, according to tax records, and some people were thinking he owned it. I don't know. I'm just wondering how much money Barry has left. Like, how much does he have to fight this new case? I mean, I'm sure Iris was pretty expensive. So the grand jury indicted him. Adults that are on those grand juries, they see enough evidence to say, yes, move forward with an arrest. An Arizona detective saw Barry driving a black Ford pickup at about 11 a.m. on June 20th, conducted the traffic stop. I can't wait to see this footage. It was near Civic Center Drive and Gilbert Road, and Barry was taken into custody without incident. After the warrant was issued for his arrest, that $3 million cash-only bond, that's been set. So that's it. We'll see what's next. Barry probably knew. He was probably looking over his shoulder the whole time. He probably knew, especially once Suzanne's remains were found. That is a miracle after so many years, that Barry knew they were coming for him. So to close it out, I'm going to play this old video I did about Shoshana and all her shady machinations with police combined with Barry, so we can kind of compare that to what she's saying now. I'm glad she's out of it. I'm glad she's away from him. I'm glad she's not like, stand by your man, I'm going to be here for you, Barry, through the whole trial. She can look at evidence and say, wait a minute, something's not right. Something is rotten in Denmark. So listen to all that as I close out. I was thinking, I did so many videos that are all gone now. Thank God I put some of them on Spotify, so I was able to pull some down and on external drives, and I might end up going through, and as this case is now, revved up again, I might go through and film updates and then bring more of my old videos out too. Thank you so much for watching. Now that Barry Morphew has been released from the Chaffee County Detention Center on a $500,000 bond, and his affidavit for arrest warrant has finally been released, along with the name Shoshana Dark, we can now look at the arrest warrant to see everything Barry has to say about his quote-unquote friend, Shoshana Dark, as well as his marriage to Suzanne, his thoughts on affairs, faithfulness, and divorce, as we look forward to his next hearing on November 9th, 2021, as of this recording, at 1:30 p.m. Let's take a look at a portion of this super long 131-page arrest affidavit. Who is Barry's girlfriend? Shoshana Dark. On December 16th, 2020, CCSO Deputy Miles Jones received a tip from a person who requested to remain anonymous. She reported that her friend, Shoshana Louise Dark, is intimately involved in a relationship with Barry. On December 17, 2020, Sergeant Hushlin and Agent Cahill interviewed Dark at the CCSO office. She said she has known Barry since October 2020 because she cleaned his neighbor's house and met him at the dumpster by chance. She denied being in a romantic or sexual relationship with Barry. Dark deleted items on her phone, one possibly being a second phone number for Barry, in front of investigators, and was evasive in answering questions. Dark said she called the CBI tip line in May 2020 to report strange vehicles being in the area around Puma Path, around the same time Suzanne disappeared. Dark said in the December interview that she did not know Suzanne, and Suzanne, she's my age. A lot of people say I resemble her. From December 2020 through April 2021, numerous Salida residents have reported that Dark is in a relationship with Barry. Their relationship is reported to date back to July 2020, though investigators have not confirmed that. A police camera installed by the FBI has captured Barry's truck consistently coming and going from Dark's residence, often between 9 p.m. and 11 p.m., sometimes staying through the night. CBI agents Graham and Cahill confirmed that Dark and Barry checked into the Antlers Hotel in Colorado Springs on February 12, 2021, and checked out on Valentine's Day, as captured on surveillance footage below, with Barry carrying Dark's luggage and Dark holding a bouquet of flowers. Barry's cell phone was either off or in airplane mode during a majority of this trip. There's the photo on February 12th. 2021 of Shoshana and Barry. Shoshana is behind him carrying flowers. Pretty sad indeed. So we can finally talk about Shoshana as documented in the arrest affidavit. Barry's relationship with Shoshana Dark is documented following this section. Basically, page 93 of 129. Apparently, Barry calls her Shona. On April 5th, 2021, there was a two-part interview. FBI agents placed 26 exhibits in front of Barry, including photos Suzanne sent to Jeff Libler, cell phone data, search photos, timelines of his activities on May 9th and May 10th, and surveillance videos. At approximately 10:25 a.m., Special Agent Grusing and Special Agent Harris contacted Barry at his residence in Poncha Springs. Barry said mentally still kinda in that just confused mode about, and I've shared this with you guys, about I was one way, and then when you guys told me about the affair, just did a 180 in my mind. I don't even know if it's a fair way for me to think sometimes. Grusing asked Barry what he meant by fair way to think. Barry said, I don't think about her the way I did before you told me that. Obviously, I think any guy would say that. I love her, I forgive her, but the betrayal, it's just harder. And I never was unfaithful on my part, so I just don't understand it. I want to blame it on the cancer, the chemo, the drugs, the alcohol. And if I could blame it on that, I would feel better. I mean, I don't even think the girls would talk to her if they found out she did this. Meanwhile, there's a text in the affidavit where Suzanne wrote of Barry Morphew. Suzanne wrote, "You're all happy now because you're with your mistress, but basically when you're with me, you're blaming me." I very much doubt that Barry was faithful during his marriage. Special Agent Harris asked Barry once if he knew what a fight was about, and he said Suzanne was accusing him of having an affair, and she accused me of having cameras in the house watching her every move. When Grusing asked Barry if he had functioning game cameras, he said, "I had game cameras. I think all of them were in the safe. They took them all. The game cameras I had outside, sometimes I put them in by the drive just to see if somebody's coming in and out when I'm gone. But most of the time I'm trying to get a picture of a deer, an elk, or a bear, but I had no cameras in the house. I've never used a camera in the house." And she was just absolutely sure I had cameras in the house. Barry said he monitored the cameras with a little SD card that he could put into a computer. He added, even the outside cameras, she thought that, you're watching, or your girlfriend is watching you on the outside cameras. I said, "Honey, the outside cameras don't even work." But she was just certain that if I was outside with her and doing something in the yard, she would say, "I know she's watching you." Just stupid stuff. And I'm like, that's why the only reason that these these fights happen is because she's accusing me, and I never understood them until now. She's accusing me because she wants to justify her relationship. Grusing said Suzanne's affair did not start until 2018, and she suspected he was having an affair while they were in Indiana. Barry said it goes way back, but it had never gotten to this point where she was just, it's almost like before when she said she wanted me to admit it and be done with it. Barry continued, and now it's like, I don't care, I got somebody, I don't care. That was her attitude. Grusing said on May 6th, Suzanne wrote in her notes that Barry accused her of blank and boyfriend. After confirming blank was one of her medications, Barry said, and I told you why I did that. I did that to make her feel what it's like to be accused because I didn't believe she had a boyfriend. I mean, I've told you guys that since day one. You surprised the heck out of me telling me she's having an affair. If you would have said she's texting somebody and having an emotional conversational affair, maybe I could have, but physical? She loves the Lord. She knows God's word. I mean, we gotta answer to the Lord when we do things like that. And Grusing interrupted with Barry's earlier reference to King David's affair. Barry was told that agents see bad things about people in investigations like this all the time, adding this was an intimate partner investigation from the beginning. Barry talked about a couple from their church whom they grew up with, and the wife went off with another man, destroying the family. Barry said, the thing about Suzanne is, I wouldn't think that she would ever destroy her family, because we were we were very close, all four of us. That's why I'm like, Suzanne couldn't do this, just knowing who she is, knowing our love story. Barry talked about meeting Suzanne, talking all night, falling in love, and having children. He spoke of the 2013 incident when Suzanne almost died from cleaning the shower with bleach and peroxide, and the fumes interacted with the chemo and put her mind into an anxiety mode. Barry said he was a workaholic and a huntaholic and cheated her out of what a woman needs emotionally. He said he was never home and worked daylight until dark, going selfishly hunting. Barry added, she's the love of my life. She'll always be the love of my life. I've forgiven her for what she's done to me. Barry added, but I don't know if I could ever be with her again if she comes back, and I'm justified not to through this. Barry said he has to trust God because God knows more than us, and I can be angry with God and say, you can't take my wife. You can't take their mother. Harris said Suzanne wrote in her notes she talked to Barry about divorce as early as 2019. Barry said, I don't recall ever talking about divorce. I recall her mentioning it in a fight, but when we're both sober and sitting down and having a heart-to-heart talk, I don't recall her telling me she wants a divorce ever. Harris explained that in 2019, Suzanne said Barry won't hear talk about divorce. Barry asked to whom Suzanne told that. An agent said it was a friend. Harris said she brought up the topic and said Barry won't even hear it. Barry said, and I wouldn't. I mean, if she said, hey, we're going to have a talk about this tonight, which she never did, I would say, I'm not discussing this because it's never gonna happen. Grusing asked if Barry or Suzanne discussed such things with the girls. Barry said, absolutely not. Grusing asked if the girls ever saw them fighting. Barry said, there's a couple of times where they saw us fighting, but it was about the other woman thing, is when I was just fed up, and I'm like, one day I was like, they were both upstairs, and I said, girls, get down here. We gotta have a talk. Your mom thinks I have a girlfriend. I don't. I don't know what to do. And I drugged them into it, and it was the worst thing I ever did, because Suzanne, she didn't appreciate that, bringing them into that. And, but I was desperate. I needed help. I needed somebody on my side. I drugged them into it, and it was a bad thing to do, and she never forgave me for that. Harris said Barry did not want to hear about divorce. Suzanne was talking about civil separation. Barry said, none of that. I didn't take any of that with a grain of salt that day when she said that. There's no way in my mind, thought that she would sit down and say, I want a divorce. That statement right there was in the middle of angry outbursts via text, and I never understood it. Now I do. But then I blamed it on alcohol or drugs or something in her system. Barry added, because she would have these outbursts and I would come home and it was like nothing ever happened. It was like two different people. So I understand. And I told this to Joe from the beginning. This looks bad. When we had this fight, I thought it was Friday. That's another thing I said coincidentally looks bad. But that had nothing to do with anything. I mean, Grusing showed Barry deleted calls from his phone on May 4th, asking if he remembers why he deleted them. Barry said, no, I don't recall deleting any calls. The only thing I deleted was texts because I don't want the girls to see them, but I don't recall deleting calls. Grusing showed deletions of calls to Dan Monex, Collegiate Peaks Bank, and others, and Barry said, no idea, don't recall deleting them. If I did, it was just to clean things up. But Barry added, well, she would show up at my job sites in a rage, thinking I was having sex with one of my clients. He clarified that incident occurred in Indiana, saying it made him look bad in front of his clients. Barry said, I know for a fact that if you guys could find out what she did, there's no doubt in my mind you could have found out if I had a girlfriend. True? Nobody, right? Grusing said he did not bring the photos of the sex site searches that Suzanne was supposedly framing him on. Barry said, I never went to a porn site. I'm against watching porn. I do not watch porn. Have I looked at a naked woman on one of those sites? I have before, but if there was ever a site that was searching for a woman, it was not me. Barry said, I've never inappropriately texted another woman since I've been married, probably since I've been in love. He said there's no proof out there he did so. Barry said he can see agents are genuine and honest and he appreciates the work for him. He added, and I would just beg whatever you could do to clear me. Grusing asked about a time when Barry texted blank in Mexico about Suzanne not being the one receiving text from blank. Barry replied, well, blank she had witnessed that once before at the house where it was a time where Suzanne was just really banging me up about having somebody. And I was kind of at my wit's end. And I grabbed her phone one time and blank was at school, but blank was there. And I just let Macy most likely know. And I just let Macy know. I said, you need to come down and hear this. I said, your mom thinks I'm having an affair. There's no way that I've ever done anything. And like I told you guys before, that was the only time we ever had arguments. Harris said agents are concerned about Barry's end-of-life planning steps to include selling off assets and his statements of not being around anymore and his weight loss. Grusing added that Barry's behavior with Shoshana to include pictures of them taken at the Antlers Hotel appears concerning. Barry said, well, I'll tell you right now that she is a special person in my life, and I've told you before, she is a dear friend. There's nothing sexual going on with her and I. Barry continued, and I didn't meet her until October 25th, the first time I ever even saw her face to face and talked to her was October 25th. Barry said by meeting Shoshana, God answered his prayer of, please give me something. He continued, my daughters know about Shona. They know we're friends. They know I go over there and, yeah, I've been there late at night, but we're talking and we're just helping each other and that's it. Special Agent Grusing addressed the end-of-life planning again, and Barry said, no, I'll be honest with you guys, and I've shared this with you. I'm a tough guy. This has been painful to me, and just being done with it. I've definitely thought about it. I could never worry about that. I know that the selling of the assets is just for me to get out of here. I'm getting out of here. Barry asked, and you assured me that if we get UI for you guys, you'll clear me? Grusing agreed, and Barry continued, I just need to move on from this, to start healing. Grusing asked about the May 6th text. When Barry told Suzanne, I'm sorry that things went the way they did, he responded, the argument. He continued, and I said this all the time to myself, Barry, you do not need to get fired up and just show her love. Barry stated, so with Suzanne, that's what I was saying through this thing. I'm like, Barry, you gotta love her. Just show her love. Don't let her get you fired up and get into an argument. Grusing reviewed the Wednesday morning text with Suzanne and Barry's responses, then asked if the argument happened before he went to work. Barry said, no, I think it was during work. I was actually on the Bobcat working here, texting her and now I didn't understand it that morning, but I do now. I mean, she was trying to make me do something or make me leave her or something because of this guy. Grusing asked what Suzanne said that morning, and Barry asked via text. He sighed and said Suzanne was accusing him of being with a woman. Grusing asked Barry, since Suzanne had a lover for 2 years at this point, why she should care if he had a girlfriend. He said, the only thing I can think of is because it would justify her thing to the girls. Grusing mentioned divorce, and Barry said, yeah, it would justify her divorcing if that's what she wanted. Or it would justify her having an affair if she thought in her mind, which there was some times where I truly believed that she really thought that. And I thought that her mind just went crazy in that place. But now that I found all this stuff out, I'm thinking she did that purposely to try to manipulate the situation with her family. Harris said Suzanne thought Barry was having an affair at one point. Barry was asked what her distant unlovingness from his text to Suzanne meant to him. Barry said, just being cold towards me. I didn't understand it at the time, but now, if she was in love with someone else and didn't want me, it makes perfect sense now that she was just being distant. Harris asked if he felt that way for a while. Barry responded, talking about Valentine's Day in Florida being amazing. And looking back, she'd talk to this guy and she'd get a different face on and then be cold. And then she would come to her senses. He continued, I just blamed it on her cancer. She's been fighting this in her mind since we left Indiana because that's when she was diagnosed. So I didn't want to ruffle any feathers during her treatment, but it was hard for me to just show her love and take care of her during this time and not get my feelings hurt when she was cold or when she did something, drugs or alcohol. On April 24th, 2020, Suzanne sent Barry the following message that was recovered from deleted images by the RMRFCL. Oh, I'm sure your mistress has you all happy now, so you can say you love me, but bully me when you're with me. Yeah, that's love. Barry sounds very manipulative, and I can imagine a lonely woman of a certain age perhaps wanting to be with him. However, what woman wouldn't be afraid that Barry might do the same things to her that he did to Suzanne Morphew, a woman he knew and allegedly loved for 32 years. Back to the affidavit. Suzanne had concerns about Barry buying virtual private network security. So Barry explains this away. No, if I did, it was an accident. And I think I don't even know what that is, but I think I told blank and mom that I was trying somebody called me about fraud and said, you need this to protect yourself. And if that's what you're talking about, Grusing said the purchase was in February 2020, and Barry said, yeah, if that was it, I thought I was buying fraud protection, and I didn't know what I was buying, but obviously if my memory recalls what I was buying, I think Suzanne thought I was doing something, secretly, which I wasn't. Grusing asked about Suzanne's note, bedroom, profession, about marrying, having babies, in reference to someone else. Barry laughed and said, no, we was having sex one time, and I said to her, it was just in the heat of the moment in a sexual frenzy. I'd said it directly to her. I said, I want to marry you and have babies. But she thought I was talking to my hand. This woman that's in my hand in a chip. Grusing asked Barry about Suzanne's statement, just wrestled free. And Barry said, I've never constricted her with my arms. Never. He added, and if we were ever in an argument, I would push up against her maybe, and then she would maybe slip around me. But I've never grabbed her and constricted her, and I told you the one incident where I struck her, that was the only time in my life where I ever did anything. So, if she's saying there was anything physical besides that, it's absolutely 100% not true. Barry wants everyone to believe he's been absolutely 100% faithful to Suzanne the entire marriage and beyond. He wants everyone to believe she's the crazy one. She's the one who was suffering from cancer and taking all these drugs and drinking too much and having the affair while he was this choir boy and his only sins were working too hard and wanting to make too much money to take care of his family. And now that Suzanne is gone, likely at the hands of the man who should have loved, honored, and protected her, he is still besmirching her memory and claiming that this Shoshana was just a friend. I mean, how many of us don't have friends where we just go over their houses at 9 p.m. or 11 p.m. at night and spend the night, bring them flowers, spend Valentine's Day for more than a week with them, and don't do anything else? Members of the opposite sex. Barry wants the public at large to believe we are stupid, and his charm and good looks can surpass everything. But I tell you what, those O.J. Simpson verdicts don't work everywhere. Not all juries will let alleged murderers go free. I think Morphew can spin this yarn as much as he wants. He can attempt to pull our legs as much as he wants. And Shoshana can attempt to portray a certain situation as it is. But I tell you what, Suzanne Morphew has a higher, greater, more powerful God and ally in Jesus on her side fighting with her. And it's a terrible thing to fall into the hands of the living God. Let's close with 2 Corinthians 13:14. May the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you all. From just reading these portions of the affidavit that cover a little bit about Barry's thoughts about Shoshana Dark, about Suzanne's affair with Jeff Libler, and beyond, it sounds like this May trial is going to be a real-ish show, if you know what I mean. In the next videos, we will continue to go through portions of the affidavit, and I will try to make them continually topical. There's so much to cover in these 131 pages. We get to see photos of Suzanne, photos of Barry, even though they're in black and white. Once the discovery is released, generally we'll get to see the colorful photos, but at least now Shoshana's name has been brought out by law enforcement. It's been confirmed. So we can talk about her now as this alleged girlfriend of Barry Morphew, even though Barry Morphew claims that's not his girlfriend. We've heard the rumors about her for months and months now, but now I feel comfortable now that law enforcement has released her name in speaking about her. Perhaps she might inadvertently end up being pivotal in his case and getting a conviction, although I doubt that's what she wants at this point. What we all want is justice for Suzanne Morphew. Barry Morphew will likely learn that charm and good looks and much speaking may not get him what he hopes it will. This affidavit reads like one long testimony of a man who's pretending he's a good Christian hardworking guy and everyone else has just wronged him without admitting much failure on his own part. He wants to come off as a victim of a wayward wife, and I can tell you most people are just not buying it. Thanks for watching.